Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we unpack the messy, beautiful intersection of creativity and business with the artists, marketers, and founders shaping our culture. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made, and I'm the host of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Maurice Cherry, designer, strategist, and host of the Revision Path podcast, Terrence Molin and Dave McClinton, designers and artists exploring AI and the future of creative work, and Andrea Radic, there we go, freelance illustrator focused on building a sustainable creative career. And she's also, I think, has worked on some pretty amazing illustration projects for Magic the Gathering. But anyways, I'm forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we are always open to more sponsors that align with our creativity. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a creative studio that produces entertainment quality animation and illustrations for brands that want to stand out in gaming, entertainment, and pop culture. We help companies tell stories that resonate with imaginative audiences and turn viewers into fandom. Whether your brand needs creative strategy or an exciting trailer, a fully produced show, or badass motion graphics for your site, we got you covered. Visit epicmade.net and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign. All right, got that out of the way. With us today, we have Kenneth Fitzgerald from Ephemeral States. Is that this? Ephemeral States? There it is. Right? Yeah. I never say this word. Yeah. Ephemeral. There we go.
As like ephemera.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. So Kenneth is an educator, designer, artist, curator, and writer based in Chesapeake, Virginia. He serves as professor of design at Old Dominion University. Shout out ODU. And has exhibited his work nationally with pieces held in public and private collections from New England to New York. His artist books in the Franklin Furnace and Museum of Modern Art Artist Books collection. He's also the author of Process Music, Song Stories, and Studies of Graphic Culture, and the also already out. I had upcoming on here. I meant to edit that. Sorry, guys. But also volumes, Design, Reviewed, Remixed, Revealed. So that's two awesome books he's written there. Today, we're diving into graphic design as both cultural artifact and creative practice, exploring the intersection of art, writing, and visual storytelling. Woo! All right. Again, that's pretty amazing run a career there. You've always been up to something creative as long as I've known you. And shout out to ODU again, where you were my design professor going on 20 years ago, 18. I graduated in like 07, 08, something like that. I don't even remember now. But yeah, amazing stuff. You've kept the ODU design department trucking along, and you've just always been a champion of the design community in Hampton Roads. So I want to shout you out real intentionally on that and tell you thank you. So
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so I know you pretty well, but the audience doesn't. So I'd love for our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So how long have you been in the industry of design, and what project are you most proud of so far?
Let's see. I like a certain percentage of designers came from the fine art area. My undergraduate degree is in ceramics. I'm a self-taught designer, not counting the graduate degree in design. And it was sort of like my fine art career was going great. I mean, I was doing all the things you would want to do, exhibiting, getting reviewed, having shows, selling the work. But I ended up literally homeless when I was doing great when I turned 30. And I, got married and realized, I need a career. And I had done some freelance design things because I thought design was fun and interesting, particularly album covers, which is how I got into art. But I didn't study design because designers made design boring. All they talked about was ads and advertising. I mean, during that era, the early 80s, that generation, the thing that if you were a designer, the plum job, the thing that you aspired to was doing corporate identity and your dream job was doing an annual report. I mean, that's what it was, that generation and the generation that followed, my generation age. And you go and talk to any of the designers my age, like ask Debbie next week. It was album covers. It was album
Mm,
covers, it was the inspiration. And you can see a real cultural change. And so I said I want to get a career. So that's why I went to graduate school for design
mm.
um, at Massachusetts College of Art and Design, where I also got my undergraduate degree. So, and naive me, I did that to say, well, I have to become more professional. Like I said, I did some freelance design things and said, well, I need to become more professional. I need to know what it's really like to be a designer. And that's not what graduate school teaches you. You know,
It does not.
it does not. It does not. So, duh. So, so what happened was what I thought I was going to graduate and be. What I wanted to be was the publications director of a college or university. That seemed like the dream job. I love the academic environment. And being a freelance designer, I just sucked at it. I was terrible at it. All props to you, Carl, for making that, being able to do that. I just saw a little bit
Thank you.
about how hard it was and have other, know many other people who do that. It is hard. So you're just awesome to do what you're doing.
I've been trying
I
my
just,
hardest.
I was just awful at it. So I thought, perfect. I would get to do a lot of different design things. I love the academic environment, and that would be the thing. That's what I thought I was going to come out of graduate school to do. And actually, um, that's the kind of jobs I was pursuing out of graduate school. But in graduate school, my thesis advisor was not anyone from the design program. Nothing against them, but it was the overall head of the design program. And he broke it to me gently in my second year that I was an academic, that I should, pursue teaching. And that was the story I tell. On the first day of my graduate program, the head of our design graduate program, there were five of us. And the other four, and we were asked, well, what do you want to be doing after you graduate? And the other four said, well, they all wanted to be teaching. And I was the one who said, well, I want to be doing design. And today I'm the one who's teaching and they're all doing design.
See, life is what happens when we're busy making plans, right?
It's the sort of thing. So when I did graduate, I was simultaneously looking for um, publication director jobs and teaching jobs. And there was a college, a well-known college in the New England area who was interested in me because I had what I thought my thesis project was going to be was the first issue of my self-produced magazine, The News of the World, which Rudy Vanderlands published in an issue of Emigre.
Oh.
And that was what interested the college in. And that was the thing that, they said, yeah, this really caught our eye while we're interested in you and being our publications director. So they were interested in me and I was offered a job teaching and I chose the teaching job. And
Here you
so
are.
that's how I went this way. And so I could really, as far as designing, since I had a day job, I could really indulge my own personal projects and doing things for the university itself. So I sort of have been doing both jobs in a way that most of the real design things have been things I would do for people at ODU like I do now. Um, I do like the literary journal out of the English department and the Model UN brochure and things here and there over the years for folks here, um, which is great.
I love that. So it sounds like what you're most proud of is just the way that you've steered your career and become, the design professor at ODU, which is amazing. And you've kept like that whole moving that way and just keep doing these freelance. And what I hear also is that like because you have your job as a professor, when you take on creative projects and design projects, you don't have the same problem that most other freelancers or people working in the space, like as a full-time designer at some studio, like there's always a client that's really quite demanding and can kind of cripple your creativity in the wrong environments. So that sounds like, and obviously that's why you've had a lot of space to do your own art, which I didn't do any art for like 10 years after I graduated because I was so lost in the grind of building this business that I stopped being creative at all. Like it was weird. um I did a couple things you mentioned in that, you more than some people know truly what it's like to be a starving artist because you were also homeless. So that's that, I'm sure you were hungry as well, which is wild. I had to put that out there because I heard you say that, which is crazy. And thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned something else in that in your
Rant.
opening there, that what was that?
In my rant.
The rant, yeah, the
Yes.
lovely rant. I love it. Um, that design was boring. Like
Yeah.
because it's like, hey, you can do reports or some branding work, and I really felt like design was boring. I did not like graphic design as I was coming out of my senior year. I was about to graduate from ODU, and I was like, this is okay, but like I saw it like it's very much a job and very much like it just didn't feel creative to me. It felt very corporate and very rigid. It felt like if you took art and all the exciting parts about art and you put it into the corporate machine, you get design on the other side. And I hated that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and then, and then, simultaneously to you bringing Stefan Sagmeister's show to do an exhibit at the new, what was it, the Baron? No, it's not Baron. What's is it, the Baron?
Yeah, the Baron and Ellen Gordon Gallery.
Yeah, so the Baron Ellen Gordon Gallery, I think that was the first year it was open, right? Might have been the second, but yeah, you had Stefan Sagmeister send his work, and it blew me away because at the same time I also took a class with Scott Williams, an art history class. Rest in peace, Scott. He was amazing.
Yeah.
And shout out to Robert McCullough as well. While we're here, shouting out amazing past ODU professors I had. But yeah, he had me doing a paper on Stefan Sagmeister, so I was understanding where he came from and his history and his background. And then I go to this exhibit, and I'm like, yeah, I'll check it out, whatever. Like I was very oblivious and had my blinders on, and just sort of going through college trying to get it done. And all of a sudden, I walk in there and I see, Stefan Sagmeister's AIGA poster where he's basically standing there like cropped naked from like just his pubic area up with the poster carved into his chest and with a razor blade. And I was like, this is graphic design? Like, this is advertising? Like, what is this? And then, like, him on the couch and, like, fat Stefan and Stefan on a bench. And, like, it was just like, this is wild. And then I really realized, like, design is communication and it can be whatever you want. And this guy's famous because he's doing ridiculous things no one's ever seen because you don't forget it after you see it. And it just like ripped the blinders off for me. And I was like, I really fell in love with the idea of what I could build if I just did what I wanted to do. So again, I thank you for that. I know I've shared that with you before, but like it's so cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if
And
that
for,
yeah.
and for me, what prompted me to even go to graduate school for it was walking into the now no longer existent Avenue Victor Hugo bookstore in Boston on Newbury Street and turning a corner in the bookstore I never had before and encountering Emigre Magazine. And this is 1992, 93, and just having my mind blown and seeing, wow, there are some people in design who are talking about design in an interesting way, who are getting it. That design can be very interesting. Naive me, and me saying, wow, there is actually space in design for me, that there are people talking about it in this way. And and then sort of accidentally, um, I wouldn't say accidentally, becoming a part of that, of um, while I'm writing my thesis for graduate school, you know, procrastinating, I write a letter to the editor for Emigre Magazine. And Rudy calls me and says he's going to publish my letter and invites me to write something for the magazine. And I don't have time to do this. I have to write, his deadline is before I have to turn in my thesis. And I had never considered writing about design. And I was going to be writing about Elliot Earls's um, multimedia piece. And I definitely had no idea how to write about something like that. So of course I said, well, yes, I'll do that. And then that leads to something else, which leads to something else. And suddenly I have a career as a design writer critic. And again, I had no expectation or intention of doing this, but suddenly I have a career and suddenly I have a platform for my bizarre ideas.
I love that, right? And that's how most people's life evolved, right? Like I just take risk and take risk and take risk and just keep trying things and like not being afraid to fail. And people see you're either good at something and like you make progress and like you enjoy that process, or you find another thing, right? It's that's how it works. And you took that risk, and obviously you still did your thesis and you got them both done. And look where it's taken you, right? And I'm sure it stressed you out. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe I did this. And it's like I feel that way all the time. Like I've never stopped feeling that way. I think I think every if I don't feel that way for a long enough time, I think that I'm being complacent, and I find a way to like overdo it and add some more stuff to my plate. Which I don't know. I guess that's how we grow and expand. Or maybe it's just like I don't know where you stand on this, but I'm so ADD. I need stimulation. I need to keep finding things to keep me excited and engaged with the world. Um, and but something you just said about like writing and being a design critic, like that in itself is analyzing and evaluating things. And we always talk about in art and in design, but there's so much subjectivity, and it's never like neutral, right? Like you see something and it either speaks to you or it doesn't. And if it doesn't speak to you, like neutral is essentially bad design. I feel like if it's not like gripping, if it's not fracturing, like it's not really doing in an advertising space, at least it's not really doing what it's supposed to do, right? Like because when you're creating design for an advertising space, it really should be I'm trying to get this group's attention in a way that is positive and gets them to do a thing that I want them to do. And I don't care about this group at all. I don't care if they like it or don't like it. I'm not designing for that, right? So yeah, I love to get into like your design critique kind of, maybe some of your theories or the way you operate from there, because I think it would be fascinating.
Yeah, I certainly one of the big still defining aspects of design is modernism and objectivity. And I'm not objective, but I say I have a declared subjectivity. I tell you where I'm coming from. I
Ooh.
say up front, these are my points. These are my ground rules. This is so you know where my opinions are coming from. And this is where I think this is what the person who's made this is what they say that they're doing. And so you know on what the terms of discussion, what the terms of engagement are. And let's test what the person who's made this, what their claims are. And pretty much that's the entirety of it is I'm testing what the claims are. And very often, the claims aren't tested in design. And very
Mm,
often, I say, you look at what I write and what the critique is, that's all I'm doing. I'm saying, all right, this is what they're claiming. Let's put it to some kind of test. Let's put it to a historical test. Let's actually see if this is the case. And the fact is, sorry, it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. It just isn't doing what's claimed here. And it doesn't, objective or subjective doesn't get into it. It's just a simple case of this, it doesn't hold up to it. And And then again, you can say, well, here's my point of view. I'm looking for something like this. And this is the audience I'm at. This is the viewpoint I'm taking. And, if you don't have that point of view of it, if you are, and I suppose one different aspect is, well, I'm looking at it as a cultural artifact as opposed to something that is um, commercial viability. They don't have to be at odds, but they are different contexts. You want to
yeah.
look at it. Okay, that's fine. That you could say, usually a term that's flung out there, speaking of Sagmeister, made you look. If you say that's our bottom line, that's all we want, or that's the primary thing for design, we just need to make you look. Okay, put naked people on it. That's going to make people look.
Every time.
Yeah. Well, a cultural critique is, well, what are you doing? Well, let's put naked ladies on it. Well, that's very damaging culturally for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
But it's economically viable because you're grabbing a lot of eyeballs. So you've got these two things in tension,
Yeah.
and you
And
you choose which one, what are you going to follow? And I think design has a lot of those tensions because those two things can be in conflict a lot of
at
ways, and a
odds.
lot
Yeah.
of criticisms or critics are disliked because, or me, my critiques of that will say, sorry, got to tell you, you've got a problem here. You are making culturally damaging things because you are elevating this straightforward made you look. Not nothing against Sagmeister,
Of course. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but
There's a time and
um,
place for all things, right? Yeah.
you
That
know,
makes sense. So, and we are talking about design as a culture building thing here, not necessarily just about problem solving. And I know a lot of creatives and artists talk about the big differentiator between design and art is this problem solving utility of it, but it is also culture building. And, so how does graphic design shape culture and narrative in ways that most people and brands underestimate?
you can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. For me, design is 100% culture. There's nothing else. As I tell students, maybe you heard this from me, but I don't have a device here that I can, that has electrodes that I can attach to your design work and get some kind of objective readout about whether or not it's successful.
Right.
Design is 100% culture. We're going to make some sort of subjective reading of it in its entirety.
Yep.
There's nothing that's objective about it other than, I'm sorry, those two colors, you've got a contrast problem. You know,
Yeah.
those
These
two
typos
colors,
don't work. Yeah.
yeah, that's
How,
that's the limit
yeah.
of the objectivity you can get
Mm,
out of a design work. Otherwise,
yep.
it's 100% culture. So no matter what you make, you're having a cultural discussion about the design.
I love that. That is
And you
true.
can't avoid it. Sorry. That's
Yep.
the kind of discussion we're getting. Of course, once again, the modernist legacy, they were all about saying, nope, nope, sorry, it's really objective. We've all got the, wiring. It's objective. No, sorry.
So look, and this is really what we're talking about is the intersection of art and business, and that's sort of the framework of this entire podcast. So,
Yeah.
how can designers create work that carries intellectual depth while still functioning in the commercial space?
Um, Maybe I'm naive, but I think that being culturally and socially responsible will lead you to more economically successful products, activities, and services. I think you win that way, and I think increasingly so. Um, to
Absolutely.
engage those, to engage those things. It's some long-term thinking. Um, but I think there's evidence of it that's quite you can find. It comes down to your personal devi desires. Do you want to make a killing or do you want to make a living? If you want to make a killing, well, then you're in a different sort of space. If you want to make a living, well, I think then you can be successful. You can make a living. But again, when you want to make a killing, then you start to loosen some of your um, ethics
Yeah,
and considerations about it, and you start to say, well, I want to make a whole lot more money, and so then things about scale, you start to get on problematic grounds about how ethical you are, about making things, about the messages you're willing to send, and how things are manufactured. You're willing to say, well, we'll just let it be thrown away and not worry about the consequences ecologically, or
yeah,
we're willing to send out these messages that appeal to lowest common denominators.
yeah.
So,
I see that a lot in McDonald's ads. Like, I'm just like, this is like this whole thing feels just disrespectful. Like it's like they're preying on a certain demographic, and there's a lot of companies that do stuff like that, and they're literally, and that's like part of the corporate machine, right? And it's sort of things are designed to serve for profit margins first and foremost, and like everything else, they if they can get away with it, they're going to do it, regardless if it's culturally damaging or if it's maybe in a gray area on ethics, or if it's going to hurt some other already disenfranchised community. Well, whatever, as long as we make our money, right? So, um, yeah, I often talk about design as a superpower because we have to make those decisions as creatives. Like, what are we going to allow our abilities to? We basically can manipulate people, right? Like on some levels, and then that's what design is designed to do, right? Like push a narrative, move a thing, make an action, do that kind of stuff. So, like we as creators of this content need to be aware of what power that has and have to be, I think, thinking about like where are we putting our energy and our effort and our abilities, and are we okay with that? Like what good or bad is coming of this because of the choices we make, because it isn't neutral.
no, and it's the fallacy of the binary. And I hear it, I've heard it for as long as I've taught, coming from students spontaneously, and I read it and have always read it in the design press and in blogs that, well, I have to succumb or I'm going to starve.
Right.
That's the binary choice, give in or starve. And I'm saying, no, there's a spectrum. Everything's a spectrum. And
Absolutely.
you have agency in this. You do make a choice, and it's not this stark binary of this or starving. And, there are some hard choices that can occur. Um, I had a job way back when that I literally walked out of because of a really abusive boss. It was technically, you could call it design. It was barely a design job. And this is when during the sort of like homeless period. And
Sure.
I walked out on the job, but the other person who was also a designer in this situation, she couldn't because me, I wasn't married yet to my wife, but you know, she was supporting me. And but this other designer, she was married, she had kids. She couldn't walk out of the job like I could.
Right.
Um, there are hard choices. Well, I could say, well, there are other design jobs or other jobs out there. Um, no one said it was going to be easy. But again, I think it's just the fallacy of it's either or. It's either starving or
Yeah.
succumbing.
No.
Um, no, no, it's
No.
not. It's not a binary.
And I've proven that on the other side of the spectrum where it's like I didn't want a job. Like I had a job in college and I hated it. I literally never worked for anyone as a creative. I've been building my own business and I did a lot of subcontracting and a lot of, freelancer stuff before I made this company. And I made it, and I did have a corporate America job, but I was doing tech support while I was in design school, at ODU. And I hated it. I literally hated it. I hated going to work. I hated the way it made me feel. I hate all the rules and all the lack of like humanity and everything. It just felt disgusting. And it was just like we're all just trading our lives for money, like we don't have a choice about the matter. And when I started my company, I always had these principles of like I'm gonna treat everyone like a decent human being, and we're gonna sink or flourish together, right? And we're gonna make money together, and we're gonna have hard times together. And I've been doing on this roller coaster for years. Like this has never been, I've been doing this basically now for 20 years. I started this while I was in that job in design school. I started this company, and there's been 6 months periods like where I couldn't pay myself, where I was just like, oh my god. But it's like I'm never the victim of the world. No, the world doesn't owe anybody anything. And I think some people forget that. They're like, oh, just because you did all the things you're supposed to do doesn't mean like there's going to be a nice job for you, or that job you'll even enjoy. Like you just have to roll with it. Like nothing is for certain ever. um and there is so much gray area in between like I've sold my soul for a corporate job, and like, oh, I do art for art's sake, and there's no commercial motives behind it, and I'm just maintaining my creative integrity. Like there's tons of gray area, and you can do whatever you want and find a space in the middle, especially because there's 8 billion people on planet Earth. Somebody likes what you're making. Like I don't care what it is. Is there a market to make a viable living on it? I don't know. That's something you have to navigate. But yeah, I totally agree with you. It is not binary.
Yeah. And I think the worst thing you can be is timid about it.
Oh yeah.
That's really um, the worst thing. And what I say about my career of being a design critic, where it's largely being people were proud to have been written about by me. And I think a lot of people would say how I felt I was regarded, that people respected me but didn't necessarily or very rarely agreed with me. But
Mm,
what they responded to, and I think Debbie would be one person, um, respected that I stood up and said what I felt. I
yeah.
said, and certainly in the early days of blogs, and it's still available now, that a lot of people would say things anonymously. It really used to be something. And they would
Sure.
say mean things anonymously. I said mean things and I signed my name to them.
There's a level of
And
respect for that, for sure.
exactly. And so that's why I felt I was respected by a lot of people, because I stood up and I said, this is what I think. This is why I think this. And they respected that. As I respected people, there are many designers and design writers who I didn't agree with on different things, but I respected and admired them and learned from them because they did that. They said, "This is my opinion. This is where it comes from." And, you know, so, and that's what I pass on to students and other people who are aspiring towards that. Don't be timid.
Yeah.
Don't be timid. I mean, you're going to get bad press. Someone's not going to like what you do. However, if you don't put it out there, not going to have the opportunity for some people to like what you do.
Yeah. A
And
100%.
And that was the other side. Yes, I am proud of the fact that I'm pretty sure that, I Magazine, the International Magazine of Design, the longest letter to the editor they've ever published was one who somebody wrote in to say how awful I was, to say that I was contributing to the dumbing down of graphic design. Yay me. That was wonderful to read. I
Wow.
lived through it. And, you know, and I'm not proud per se, but hey, wow, somebody was read what I wrote. And that wasn't, you know. And again, when Debbie spoke, she talked about how, her life changed because people wrote mean things about her. And it was the same thing, sort of like for me, that, my feeling was, I mean, that happened to me also with Speak Up. The first things they wrote about me was how, you know, awful I was. And for me, it was, wow, people are reading what I wrote. I am so happy. I am
I,
so happy that
I,
people are
I love it.
reading it. And
I've had that
again,
experience myself. And whenever I
yeah,
post content, if people show up and they're like, oh my God, this sucks. You should, don't quit your day job or whatever. And it's like, the algorithm, people are seeing my work. Thank you for commenting.
yeah.
Like,
And
yeah,
then you hear from the people who really love what you're doing,
of
who are
course.
excited by it and inspired by it. And
Yep.
you then form or become part of a community of people that you didn't know were out there,
Yeah.
as
I think
I did,
and I love that. And my wife broke that down for me not too long ago. That like, because I used to be a people pleaser and just like want everyone to like me, right? And when you get to a certain space, especially when you're trying to do things like we talked about here in design and and branding and creativity and all that sort of stuff, like it's so subjective that it's essentially a flavor, right? Like some people love mint chocolate chip ice cream, and maybe I'm mint chocolate chip ice cream, like that's my flavor, but I hate Rocky Road or cookie dough or like whatever. And like so if you when you start looking at it like taste and preferences and not good and bad and right and wrong and remove that like weird binary, it starts to become, oh, this is about culture. This is about people's individual life experiences and how something resonates and speaks to them and what they do and don't like as an individual, and it has no grading or no bearing on the quality of what you're doing or who you are or any of that. It's just variety, right? And that's okay. That's like the literal spice of life. Like that's what makes the whole world interesting. That's what makes different cultures interesting and different spaces, and allows us to find our people to have like interest. And I love that. So just embracing that diversity, I think, is a whole better mindset. And I love it. So yeah.
um, it's, I said, it's not being timid, and it's a willingness or some courage. Me, I downplay sort of like the courage aspect. It was very flattering for years that when I started writing and writing these things, and I would meet people at conferences for years, and people say, "Wow, you're really brave to write these things and say these things in public." And I would say, thank you, but I say, the people who are really brave are those in countries that have oppressive governments and who may be killed for what they say.
Yes.
Me, it's some people don't like me, and that's nothing. And there is, and as I said, there's the other side, is that the people who do like you. So it was very nice to hear that. I appreciated it, but um, I didn't count it as sort of, courage in that. Um, but I do think it's not being timid. to have, faith in yourself. That's what you need to do. You have to know, have your own personal reason why you do things, to do
Yeah.
things because you want to do them. And that gets you through the times when nobody is paying attention to you.
Yeah.
And then when people are paying attention to you and you don't know what to do, you have something to guide you, which is, I'm doing this for me, and this is what I want to do. And that keeps you honest and it keeps you on track on doing what's true for yourself and not, going astray, being it's nice to please people, but you have to please yourself first. And
100%.
yeah,
I love this not timid thing, because
yeah,
there's a couple aspects I think in like, I have a BFA in fine arts with a concentration in graphic design, right? So it's like, but they didn't teach us. There was no classes in that curriculum, and I imagine in most art curriculums that like, hey, this is the shit you need to know to actually be a functional, like, artist in the world. To actually, here's how contracts work. Here's how negotiation works. Here's how,
yeah.
like, I mean, we do the critiques, and those were helpful, like putting your work up on the wall and having everyone look at it and talk about it. But like that lack of timidness and the ability to understand how the capital the the I guess the capitalistic side of this works, if you want to be an artist that actually does this for a job, like the business side of creativity, it just is not there at all, and it seems really weird. I grew up, I'm a third generation entrepreneur. I had that hustle in my bones, and my two brothers are both entrepreneurs. Like, I don't think there was a world where I wasn't going to be an entrepreneur. So I fell into this quite naturally, just through the way I was raised and the conversations, I had with my father growing up about, just building things and doing things for myself and, just understanding concepts of business. But I don't think a lot of people have that. I think, and there's a lot of artists that are introverted and very timid by nature. So they need tools and resources to be able to, survive in the world. Like, and one of the very first thing is you can't be timid in business or you get eaten up and spit out. Like that's just the very first thing. And we're not even talking about just like people's opinions and like, oh, like somebody doesn't like you. We're talking about like, if you don't stand up for yourself in the contractual negotiations of when you're being hired to do work, you're going to get abused unless you're dealing with a person that's actually a good person. But if you scale that up into big business, like big business wants to take advantage of you, of everything. They want everything as cheap as possible and to get as much of it as they can. Um, it's an interesting world, and it's not for the faint of heart. So, yeah,
I hear you, and could talk a long time about building a curriculum in a program.
sure.
And there's so much you can think about. Oh, we need to put this in our program. Oh, we need to put that. And we have the capstone. Some of it goes into the final class, and some of it goes into the design services class, which is run like a studio doing work for designers.
Oh, cool.
But it's also a reason why I have been an AIGA member since the 90s. Really, I, go to AIGA conferences to hang out with my design friends all over the country.
Yep.
So I can get together, for a while. It's a young person sort of thing.
Sure.
But that is, for me, sustaining it is where that sort of information can be. I stay a member to keep it alive for the young folk so they can learn the things you're talking about there. Because that doesn't mean we ignore it in the program, but to say there's where a lot of things, and why I encourage students all the time, you should become an AIGA member
Yep.
because you need to know all this sort of stuff, and this is what they focus on. I hear you.
Yeah, and you guys introduced me to the Graphic Artists Guild Pricing and Ethical Guidelines Handbook, which I've been a member of AIJ since college, and you told me about it. And I also have been a member of the Graphic Artists Guild for quite a while now as well, and I'm on the board there. And we really, really try to stand up for artists in the creative economy and try to make sure that they have the tools and guidelines to understand how they should price their work and protect themselves on that business side. And on the AIGA side, I learned a whole lot through the relationships and networking and building partnerships and deep relationships with other people that had already had design businesses and already knew the things that I didn't even know that I didn't know, right? And building myself up through that was very helpful. So definitely trade organizations are huge in that. And look, you can't teach everything in school. Like you have to just go out and spread your wings and try not to fall from the nest, right? Like so that's essentially what they're trying to prep you for at school, just to give you the best chance to get it out. And look, I'm so thankful. I didn't know anything about design. I didn't know anything about professional art, anything about even like structured color theory. No, I learned all of that from you guys at ODU. Like my father was an artist, but he didn't. I watched it and saw it and understood it, but like I didn't learn the craft at all growing up. I learned that entirely at ODU, which was really cool, and then built on it myself because I loved it and it was what I should be doing in my life. So, yeah. But so we are coming up on time here. This went really quick. So I do have one last question for you. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you would like to shout out to the audience? Maybe a mentor, a valuable resource, or a favorite client?
Um, I think the person I definitely have to shout out is who I already mentioned, Rudy Vanderlands at Emigre Magazine, who, based on that letter to the editor, called me way back when and invited me to write something just based on a letter to the editor. Like I would not be here if he hadn't have had done that. He definitely, you know, lived up to the standards and the premise that he set for that magazine. It certainly inspired me seeing the magazine of thinking about design at all and gave me this platform for years. Let me say all these really strange things. Well, there are a lot of strange things he didn't let me say. And he was a fabulous mentor. And a lot of things I wrote, he also, I mean, he edited. I know that it's sort of like thought that he just let things go, but no, he and I worked on the things I wrote. So he deserves a lot of credit for editing my things, the good things, the really strange things. No, I take credit for those. So definitely, it was an amazing experience. It got me where I am today to have that experience.
I
So,
love that. Well,
um,
shout out to
definitely,
Rudy.
that's
And
that's the shout out. He's the one who brought me to the dance. So that's why I celebrate in t-shirt.
I love that, and I'll encourage everyone as they come up in their careers to, give people chances and reach your hand back and pull people along with you as you've made your way. And I try to do that all the time. I know you've done it over and over again for people, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's how you build strong, meaningful communities. So, um, big thank you to Old Dominion University, where I first met Ken, and he was my design, I think, three professor. I don't know which class it was. It was one of them. But that was super cool. And then AIGA is where you and I really kind of came back together as, I don't know if you consider me your peer at this phase in the game, but like
Yes,
more, yeah, okay.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
well, I love that. So that's where we kind of came back together as peers and helped run that chapter for a while. And yeah, it was just really cool. And Ken, I'm just so thankful to have you be a part of the creative community. I'm a part of the creative community that you've been building here. So in the Hampton Roads, and that's pretty amazing. So but you guys, if you want to check out more about Ken, you can go to ephemeralstates.com. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, is there a better place for them to go?
That's the place.
Cool.
Go there.
They can shoot you an email and reach out to you and all that stuff, I assume, right?
Yes.
Cool. The link to that will be in the show notes in case you don't know how to spell ephemeral, because I have a hard time even saying it. So here we are.
Ephemera,
I
like design,
love
is
it.
ephemera.
All right. All right, Kim. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, and we will see you all next time. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye now.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.